This video is not meant to be a statement of absolute fact, nor does it exist to directly accuse anybody of anything. Rather, it's a presentation of the evidence that we've discovered and an open call for others, on both the inside and out, to discuss the issues explored therein. Furthermore, any audio accompanied by the Devon No Talent Gaming artwork can be considered to be entirely our own opinion or conjecture on a topic. Thank you and enjoy. Sorry for the hideously late video, buddies, but the subject matter ended up taking a lot longer to investigate than we thought. Recently, something stupid happened on Twitter. Shocking, right? Jay Allen, aka A Man in Black, tweeted Shigeru Miyamoto was hired because of nepotism. And then later, seriously, Shigeru Miyamoto got a job at Nintendo because his father knew somebody there. Thankfully, many people saw exactly how retarded Jay Allen was being, and the internet gave him the lashing he so rightly deserved. Margaret Gell posted a passage regarding Jay Allen's stupidity, which I'll summarize here quickly. Some indie devs and social justice warriors view the behaviors of AAA development studios as being the gaming industry's biggest problem, and because they oppose AAA developers, they must be, by default, the gaming industry's solution. And because Gamergate opposes them, we must be, by default, supporting anything AAA studios do and be part of the problem. It's a very you're with us or against us mentality. Just for the sake of meticulousness, let's actually examine Jay Allen's claim. Nick Baumgarten published Master of Play, the story of Miyamoto in The New Yorker on December 20th, 2010. In it, it stated that Miyamoto's father got him an interview with Nintendo's president through a mutual friend, and that in his interview, he showed off toys of his own design. Miyamoto impressed them enough that he was hired to be an apprentice in the planning department. So, was Miyamoto hired because of his dad, like Jay Allen claimed? Well, no. He got the job interview because of his dad's friend, but it was Miyamoto himself who made a good impression during the interview. Is it nepotism that Miyamoto got hired? No. Is it nepotism that Miyamoto got a chance at an interview? Well, yes. But considering it happened in 1977, and ultimately gave birth to not just some of the best video games of all time, but also created modern gaming, perhaps we can cut them a little bit of slack. All of Jay Allen's rampant stupidity reminded me of David Arbach's recent tweetlonger. Arbach is a software engineer and columnist over at Slate. We first got wind of him when he watched our videos on the IGF and Brandon Boyer and stated that the IGF merits an independent audit, and prediction, Boyer, Scavio, and Edwards will all step down within 18 months. His tweetlonger really is a good read. I recommend everyone give it a good once-over, but once again, I'll give a brief rundown here. Arbach says that the ultimate goal of the indie press, meaning Kotaku, Polygon, Gamasutra, and so on, is to gain more influence in the industry. They want to have the ears of the AAA developers, they want to be invited to the conferences, and so on. That remains their primary professional goal. While the individuals working for and running these outlets may have personal goals relating to their own career advancement or bringing social justice into gaming or whatever, the top prize is still ultimately influence with the big boys. When Gamergate came along and began exposing the corrupt behavior of these outlets, it lessened their influence, which is why it was in the best interest of these outlets to try and discredit Gamergate by any means necessary, even going so far as to link IGN's adoption of ethical policies to the idea that IGN is appeasing what they have publicly labeled as a hate group. In other words, these indie press outlets desire to discredit Gamergate so much that they are willing to slander anybody who discusses ethics, whether they consider themselves to be affiliated with Gamergate or not, as racists and misogynists. Arbach says these indie press outlets were banking on the specter of misogyny to be a powerful enough scare that AAA developers would come out of the woodwork to admonish Gamergate, and in doing so, they would be giving the indie press outlets the professional influence they so desperately crave. However, there are two big problems with their plan. One, AAA developers largely don't share the same opinions with these journalists on a personal level. They see their social justice warrior leanings as curtailing artistic freedom. And two, AAA developers understood that the indie press outlets fucked up big time when they chose to attack all gamers. These outlets were willing to attack their own audience and tank their own businesses as a calculated gamble to improve their own standing in the industry, but the AAA developers aren't willing to follow them into that abyss. But most importantly of all, Arbok theorizes that AAA developers have been largely silent on Gamergate because they're willing to let Gamergate do the dirty work of taking out the indie press that has been a thorn in their sides for over a decade. The indie press outlets were an easy target for Gamergate because they are extremely incompetent with their corruption, while corporate corruption by actual industry names is often significantly more professional and therefore harder to uncover. Arbok directly says the AAAs and mouthpieces like IGN run a professional outlet. Sure, it's all a big PR con job, but they aren't going to have journalists reviewing games by people they're publicly friends with, and they eventually realized to cut out the Doritos nonsense even if a bit too late. He also says that the indie press journals were the low-hanging fruit. Investigation into AAA corruption would take boots on the ground that Gamergate doesn't have. This reality that Arbok describes actually forms what I consider to be the only legitimate criticism anti-Gamergaters have ever thrown at Gamergate. And that criticism is this: Gamergate only focuses on small-time corruption, for example like Zoe Quinn way back at the beginning, not because she was corrupt, but because she's a woman and her corruption offers misogynists a convenient excuse to harass her. I have no doubt that this is the case for some people. However, this criticism often leads anti-Gamergaters to the next logical step, that Gamergate does not actually care about corruption at all, because it has yet to tackle AAA corruption, which is obviously much bigger. Arbok's tweet longer offers the best reply to this. It's not that Gamergate doesn't care, it's that Gamergate isn't big enough to do it. Everybody over here hopes that Gamergate will one day grow large enough to tackle AAA corruption, even if it would have to shed the Gamergate hashtag in order to get it done. And even among AAA corruption, there's some obvious low-hanging fruit too. Everybody knows about the Kane Lynch dead man controversy, but I'll give you a quick primer right here. In 2007, Kane Lynch came out. It sucked. Jeff Gerstmann, writing a review for GameSpot of the game, gave it a 6 out of 10, at the same time as Eidos was paying GameSpot a ton of money to advertise the game. Gerstmann was fired, and GameSpot refused to elaborate on it. But nobody was fooled. 5 years later, after the non-disclosure agreement was up, Gerstmann confirmed what we all already knew in an interview on Giant Bomb, that Eidos pressured GameSpot to fire him, and GameSpot caved. And, as a related aside, in our last video we brought up Geography performing consulting for BioWare, EA, Microsoft Studios, and Ubisoft, while also simultaneously performing consulting for the IGDA, stating that there may be a potential conflict of interest when the same company performs consulting for the companies developers work for, and also the association meant to stand up for the rights of said developers. We also said that it probably wasn't a big deal, but our friend Derek Smart wasn't so convinced. He said there may actually be something to it, and he was going to look into it. Haven't heard back from him yet one way or the other, and I hope he decides to come forward if he finds anything. But when it comes to corruption, not all the happenings take place on our side of the Pacific. Yeah, I'm talking about Japan. Gamergate doesn't seem to focus too much on the Japanese gaming industry, presumably because Gamergate is a primarily English-speaking movement without access to the non-English scene. Whenever Gators do talk about Japan, it's almost always in reference to Mighty No. 9, which is less of a corruption issue and more of a social justice issue. Don't get me wrong, backers to Mighty No. 9 losing their privileges for supporting Gamergate is corrupt. People paid money for a service and lost it due to their political stance. But I hate to break it to you guys, but Dina pushing social justice views isn't corrupt. It's just mind-numbingly stupid, and she ultimately got what was coming to her. And then there's the mystical fabled Shenmue 3. For those of you who don't know, during Sony's E3 conference this year, Shenmue 3 was shown off along with a link to its Kickstarter. This was unusual because usually during an E3 conference, the games shown off are already in development, usually by the company hosting the conference. But for Shenmue 3, it was a short teaser and a link to the Kickstarter. Kickstarter was knocked offline immediately, and Shenmue 3 got its requested $2 million in about 24 hours. That seems like a lot of money, and it did break some Kickstarter records, until you realize that Shenmue 1 cost between $47 million and $70 million to develop. When you adjust that for inflation, that's $99 million. To contrast, Witcher 3's budget was $25 million. And even without doing the math, I think it's pretty obvious that Sony has a vested interest in seeing Shenmue 3 come out, and will be funding it themselves to that end. This was directly confirmed by Yu Suzuki, Shenmue's director, on a post on the Kickstarter, saying that both Sony and Shibuya Productions will be funding Shenmue 3. So what's the Kickstarter for? Just to drum up hype? To pad somebody's pockets with a bit of extra cash? As of recording this, the Kickstarter is at $4.1 million. Assume for a minute Shenmue 3 didn't have a Kickstarter, and Sony just announced it at E3. You don't think Sony couldn't pony up an extra $4.1 million? It's good that Suzuki came out and clarified things. That sort of transparency is something we need to see more of, not less. But there's a major problem with the way Kickstarter is heading. It used to be a platform for people who couldn't fund their projects to get things off the ground. Now, it's just a place for big names to hype up their next project. Kinda like the IGF, now that I think of it. But oh wait, we're not done with Japan just yet. Let's take a peek at the Japanese indie scene. In 2013, James Melk, or Mielk, I can't pronounce it, an employee at the Japanese developer Q Games, started up Bit Summit, a convention for Japanese indies to get together and showcase their games. Polygon ran an article discussing the details of Bit Summit's beginnings. In 2014, during the second Bit Summit, they decided to give out awards to the best indie games at the show. Sounds pretty familiar so far, right? Well, on Bit Summit's own page, 5 development studios are stated to be the backers behind Bit Summit. They are Q Games, Vitae, 17-Bit, Pygmy Studio, and O2 Inc. Now, anybody who knows about Q Games knows that it's not really an indie studio. It's made multiple first and second party games with both Sony and Nintendo, most notably Star Fox Command and Star Fox 64 3D. This is important because Q Games president, Dylan Cuthbert, programmed the original Star Fox on the Super Nintendo when he was just 17 years old. The point is, these guys aren't indies. Cuthbert married Miyamoto's daughter, for fuck's sake. He's not an indie. Let's take a look at the second studio on the list of the 5 Bit Summit backers, Vitae. On an old background page, only accessible by the Internet Wayback Machine, Vitae is described as being founded in 2002 by Giles Goddard, who's been an important figure in the Japanese games industry since 1990, when he moved to Kyoto to program Star Fox for the SNES. For many years, he worked at Nintendo on a variety of key franchises, including Stunt Race FX, Super Mario 64, and 1080 Snowboarding. It's likely that Goddard and Cuthbert are old friends due to their time spent working on Star Fox together. And clearly, Goddard isn't really all that indie either. He went out and founded his own studio, sure, but he still got his old connections and everything. Hell, the website boasts that Vitae works closely with Nintendo to create games such as Steel Diver, which was produced in close coordination with Shigeru Miyamoto. So again, not indie. But this is all okay so far. These guys are heading up Bit Summit. They don't necessarily have to be indie themselves. Except that the Modern Zombie Taxi Driver, a game by Vitae, won the Vermilion Gate Award at Bit Summit 2014. Vermilion Gate basically being Bit Summit's best of show. Are you fucking kidding me? Not only is Vitae not an indie studio by any stretch of the imagination, what with their buddying it up with Nintendo, but Vitae is a fucking backer of Bit Summit. Vitae helps support and organize an award show, and then wins an award at that very same show, while another of the backers, Q Games, is run by a personal friend of Vitae's director. That's just awesome. Is there just something about the term indie that makes it an incestuous circle jerk no matter what language it's in? I actually thought the Japanese scene would have been free of this shit, but no, I guess it's the same everywhere you go. Let's just cover all our bases here. Let's look at the other 3 backers. 17-Bit, run by Jake Kasdell. His resume includes working at EA, working at Sega where he helped make Rez and Space Channel 5, and working on Illusion of Gaia, as well as a number of unnamed N64 games. It's the same situation as with Goddard at Vitae and Cuthbert at Q Games. They might have started their own studios, but they've still got all their old connections and friendships. They're not indies. Wait. We are a Seattle-based independent developer? You're not even over there and you have your thumbs in Bit Summit? Pygmy Studios and O2 Inc. seem to be legit enough. At the very least, they're fucking Japanese. Let's take a peek at the other awards winners. Lots of Japanese text. Something to be expected at a Japanese awards show. Hold on. Funkatronic Labs Nova 11 won 2nd place for game design and runner-up for Vermilion Gate. Let's take a peek at their About page. Pasadena, California? These guys aren't even a Japanese indie dev. Is this sort of like how one of Zoe Quinn's games won in IGF China, even though I doubt Zoe's ever actually stepped foot in the glorious motherland? This video is over 2 months late, and the primary reason for that is because CameraLady wanted to tackle the AAAs. And she did a lot of digging. But the cold hard truth is, you can only do so much being an armchair detective. David Arbach was pretty spot on when he said that AAA corruption isn't sloppy and stupid the way indie corruption is. Cam spent a ton of time overturning every rock, tapping every resources, asking questions in private, and ultimately even traveling down to Toronto to meet with an old high school friend who, by random chance, is currently married to a small-time Japanese indie dev, and we're in Canada to visit her family. He told her that the Japanese indie scene was just as bullshit as the English one, and directed her towards Bit Summit. And really, for all of her efforts, this is the most she could get. That Nintendo is a tertiary party in the same corrupt bullshit in the Japanese indie scene that we're all used to hearing about by now. In my opinion, no one at Nintendo themselves even seems to be guilty of anything. It's all just former Nintendo employees thinking they can put on the indie hat while keeping all of their old connections and act like kings of the shit pile. Does this mean that when it comes to AAA corruption, Gamergate is completely outmatched and useless? Well, no, I don't think it does. People have remarked that Gamergate has shifted focus from being an angry mob and into a vigilant watchdog, and the truth is, that is the only way that AAA corruption is ever going to be routed. Remember when the Xbox One got completely shit on with its mandatory Kinect and its always-on functionality, and the arrogance to the point of the people at Microsoft telling consumers to buy an Xbox 360 if they wanted a console that wasn't always on? Remember how they got their shit royally kicked in for it? That's ultimately who we are, as Gamergaters and as gamers. If you think someone's being corrupt, whether it's with reviews, or DRM, or bullshit DLC and microtransactions, or whatever, all you need to do is talk about it. We're all aware of the shit they try to pull now, and we have the tools to get the word out. This isn't directly related, but Reddit is burning right now, because everybody is hyper aware of what all of these shitheads are trying to slip by under our noses. We keep them alive, and we've also become their most dangerous enemy, an informed consumer base. Arbach was right when he said that the AAAs are content to let us deal with their journal problem for them. And honestly, we are content to do it. But we're also keeping a very close eye on you, AAAs. YouTubers are far less likely to gloss over a game's obvious problems than a reviewer is. Sup guys, here's a bit of an after video special. I'm really sorry it took us so long to get this one out, but it happened pretty much like I said. Cam spent a lot of time investigating and unfortunately just didn't dig up much to show for it. The only way we're ever going to get conclusive proof of AAA corruption is either from the inside or something stupidly public like Kane and Lynch happens again. I'm still holding out hope that developers will feel free to speak to us or others, even anonymously. I also plan to release a video discussing the future of the Indie-Fensible series and other happenings on the Short Fat Otaku channel sometime tomorrow, so please come back and check that out. But basically, regardless of the reasoning behind it, the wait between this video and the last one was just unacceptably long, especially since a regular update to this series was promised as a Patreon goal. I mean, you guys gave us money, and for the past 2 months we've failed to come through with the goods. There's really no excuse for that, and we do have other videos coming in short order to rectify the situation. I've seen what kind of people exploit Patreon by promising goals and not following through. And we've all agreed that we need to actually keep up with the videos y'all are here for, or just shut the Patreon down. And we choose option 1. So, this is our formal apology to you, our viewers, about the lack of content, and you will see the next Indie-Fensible very soon. And speaking of Patreon, a very special thanks to Rex, James Knotts, Smitho, Samuel Dillon, Murray, Big Boss 79, Pharmacist, Garrison James Hamilton, Berto Elcon, Simon Kavam, Hinte Logic, Pasquale Festa, and anybody else who contributes anonymously. Any amount helps, and you guys are amazing. We've put your money to good use, buying new equipment that our show desperately needs. If you want to support the show, the Patreon address is www.patreon.com/shortfatotaku. Or, if you'd rather do a one-time thing, our PayPal's at shortfatotaku@hotmail.com. We post receipts and vlogs about the equipment we buy, so you'll always know your money is going towards our videos and our channel. And of course, don't feel pressured to give or anything. You'll always be welcome whether you give or not. If you want to see more of us, me and my roommate Dave play video games twice a day on this channel, and we're actually starting up a new round of games right now if you want to jump on board with a fresh run of something. We're also doing anime reviews again finally too, with the most recent review just coming out on the 3rd, and the next review coming in about 3 weeks time. And well, if you're only here to listen to me talk about Gamergate, come back for my update video tomorrow, and the next Indie-Fensible video next week. Wherever you see me, I'll see you there.